Welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I am your host, Dr. Harbir Sayan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here, guys, to learn and to grow. As always, I'm so grateful for all the support. As always, as I say thank you, the next thing I do is ask a quick favor. If you could please continue to share, continue to do all the liking and commenting and everything you do. But if you find any value from this conversation, please take a screenshot, put it on Instagram, or put a link on LinkedIn, send a text to a friend, whatever you do to help keep spreading the word, keep sharing these conversations with our friends and colleagues so we can keep making the profession better. And this conversation, this one's going to be a really good one. I'm telling you right now, if you don't know my good friend already, Dr. Meenal Agarwal, she has a lot to share. We're going to go through a bunch of different topics. We're going to talk about her book called Stuck in a Flat World. We're going to talk about her podcast, Uncover Your Eyes. We're going to talk about her being a multi-practice owner. We're going to talk about burnout and all the other stuff that comes with doing all these different things that somebody like Meenal does, as well as being a mom of 3 beautiful children. This is going to be a conversation that's going to be really valuable for everybody, anybody who's listening, whether you're early in your career, late in your career. So please make sure you stay tuned through the whole thing, and then let me know what parts you liked and enjoyed the most. So Meenal, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for you being here and so glad that we finally get to do this.
Yes, no, thank you so much, Harbir. Thank you for having me. This is going to be so great. I'm
It is.
excited.
I'm actually very, very excited for this conversation. Not to say I'm not excited for the other conversations that I have on the podcast.
Okay.
So please, other guests, don't write to me and get mad at me. Okay. Meenal, why don't you give us a little intro? I know I gave a few little snippets of what your life's about, but tell us a bit more.
I mean, I think you've pretty much summarized my life in a nutshell. But yeah, I mean, I own 3 practices in Toronto, and it started with one practice, grew to the second practice after a year, and then a couple of years later, I grew to the third practice. There was always thought of growing to like a 4th and 5th,
Oh my goodness.
but I had to put a stop on it because I knew there was something wrong with me. That how come I'm never satisfied? And that's a whole nother topic. But
that is an important topic.
it was kind of feeding this, I want to say ego or this satisfaction that was just never being fulfilled. So, then I started looking at other directions, what would kind of fulfill me, what would make me feel good, and what I wanted to put out in this world, or leave the world with. You want to say it's like a legacy, but like a small legacy. And, it started with my podcast and, putting out truths about healthcare. And that was really important to me because I felt, in our profession, as many people probably do, undermined as an optometrist. And I felt that I was, told many times that I was just an optometrist, or I only knew about that organ of our body and don't even talk about menopause and don't talk about cognitive issues. Don't talk about other things because stay in your lane. And that's kind of how the podcast was born, out of frustration that we weren't linking optometry into the rest of healthcare. And then talk about satisfaction. I decided, what, I needed to write my book, and that's been a work for the last, I want to say 3 years. It's taken to get to this level, and meanwhile having 3 kids,
Right.
and then their work-life balance is a whole nother issue.
Right.
But yeah, that's kind of my life in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. I mean, that's a very big nutshell. We will talk a bit about burnout because I know that you certainly have a lot of really good insights on that. And through your podcast, you've spoken to a lot of experts in this space of, well, I don't know how you could phrase it in so many different ways: burnout, work-life balance, or just generally mental health, and kind of getting a better understanding of who you are, what you're looking to achieve in your life, and what brings you satisfaction. You mentioned, pursuing this, growing your businesses more and more and more, and you're searching for something, some sort of satisfaction, but ultimately it wasn't coming to you through that avenue. So you started pursuing all these other things. I think it's really important. I think there's a lot of us that are in that place right now. So maybe we'll dig a little bit more into that a little later. Writing a book seems to me as being one of the most challenging things to do in life. Would you agree? Is that true or no?
I mean, 100% super challenging coming from somebody who does not read books. I really don't read. I'm not a reader. I don't listen to audiobooks. just not my thing. But I surprised myself. And when I started writing my thoughts down, I was like, this is me. And, this is what I want to do. And I want to write about this and I want the world to know. And
Mm,
I think there's two means to get your thoughts out there. One is like obviously podcasting and speaking it. And the other way is through a book and writing it. And for me, it was, I wanted to tap into both avenues. And I knew I wanted to write a book for a long time, but it was just, well, I'm not a reader. And so maybe I'm illiterate and I don't know how to write a book, right? And it was more that was stressing me out. And then finally I said, you know what? A lot of people didn't believe in that I could start a podcast. A lot of people didn't believe I was good enough in speaking. That's it. I'm going to do this because I have to believe in myself. And I think that's the biggest misconception that people have about themselves. You want to call it imposter syndrome or
mm,
whatever, burnout, you want to call whatever you want to call it, is you can blame everybody else, but you need to believe in yourself. And once
mm.
you believe in yourself, you can do it.
That's so true. I love that message. That's amazing. And I think many of us are facing that. I think imposter syndrome is probably the term most people will use, whereas like, am I worthy of this? Who am I to do this? But I love that. I recently shared on the podcast this quote from Marianne Williamson, which is, to let your light shine brightly. And, we often ask ourselves, who am I to do this? But really the question is, who are you not to? And really by making yourself feel small is not making the world better. In fact, you're taking away that light you might be shining to help other people, to help them out of their comfort zone and that little shell that they might be in. So I'm glad that you're doing it. There's obviously always going to be naysayers, but at the same time, there's going to be so many people you are helping by doing it and showing them that it's doable. So tell us a little bit about your book. What is, we talked about, it's called Stuck in a Flat World, but really what are we diving into in that book?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's called Stuck in a Flat World. It's how screens rewire our brains, spatial awareness, and sense of safety. So it came from this concept of this, term spatial awareness, your awareness of space. And as I was in clinic, I was seeing a lot of changes in patients, whether it was a simple teens not wanting to drive anymore. We always have to check it,
Mm,
do they have a license? I was like, why are all these teens not driving? Kids being more labeled as ADHD, as,
mm,
all being on some form of a spectrum, children coming in not even want to say hi to me, a change in social cues, a change in literacy, like people not being able to copy off the boards, a board. And even in my own kids' school, like noticing there was a lot of kids who didn't want to join team sports.
mm,
So they would want to join like specific sports like track and field,
mm,
but not basketball. And the reasoning was, my children don't like team sports. So all of this was kind of worrying me, like what is going on? And then as I started seeing more signs of myself getting more anxious, not wanting to drive as much,
mm.
certain changes, becoming more introverted. And Herbie, or you and me talked about this before, that I now classify myself as an introvert and I used to be so extroverted. And Herbie, I think you knew me like years ago when I
Yeah.
probably was more extroverted.
Yeah.
But for people who knew me before to be like, you're not an introvert now, like they're worried, like, why is she so introverted? I think I suffered from spatial awareness issues. And so seeing all this, I started doing a lot of research on what's happening in the brain. Why with modern lifestyle are these things, is our brain changing such that we're scared? And connecting all the dots in the brain and understanding how the amygdala, the fear center of our brain works, how spatial empathy works, how all these different areas, the cerebellum, the vestibular system, proprioceptive system, like connecting all those dots kind of made me scared. Like, this is what's happening to us. We are going to grow up as the most scared, the most anxious, the most introverted generation ever. And we literally could see people in houses boxed in, not wanting to talk to anybody, and we're all going to have mental health issues. And that led me to coining this term called Spatial Awareness Processing Disorder. I didn't want to label people as anxious or ADHD or, whatnot, when a piece of that puzzle was their awareness of space.
Mm,
And that's really what led me to writing this book. It was the clinic encounters and myself going through it and feeling, with our modern lifestyle, me being on a screen all day, things were shifting, things are changing, and so is our brain. And I really wanted people to understand that connection between the eye and brain. Yes, I want other healthcare providers to get it, but I also want us as optometrists to get it, because
Yeah.
so often we undermine our own capabilities, and that's very scary. And I struggle with that, and I think I've always struggled with that throughout optometry, is how many optometrists feel that our profession is not worthy enough. And it's, if we feel that way, what are others going to think of us?
Hmm.
We project that onto our patients. And that's why there are patients that will cancel your appointment to go get a haircut. They value that more than us. And this was my way to put out in the world that we matter, our concepts matter, and the eyes matter.
I think that whole haircut appointment versus eye care appointment will hit hard for a lot of people, and I might want to talk a little bit more about that a little later too. But let's stay with the book here for a moment. So you coined the term spatial. Remind me again, what is
Awareness,
this? Processing
spatial
disorder,
awareness processing disorder. In short, it's SAPD.
SAPD. So that is your term that you've coined.
Yes,
That's
yes.
amazing. Okay, so you've done all the research to kind of to define what that is and what it looks like, what the symptoms might be, and how to assess it.
Exactly.
That's really
And there's
incredible.
also, like in the book, there's also something we call the SAPD 10, kind of like we have the DEQ or, other
Oh yeah,
checklists.
okay.
And it helps you figure out if you fall into that category going through that checklist. And I think that's an important part of it, because people want to know where they place. People want a label. People
Mm,
want to know where they are. But the good thing about it is, I mean, spatial skills are rebuildable, right? And we talk
yeah,
a
for
lot
sure.
in the book about how to rebuild it with children, with adults. I mean, I as an adult feel I suffered from it, and my anxiety was sky high. Like, I had panic attacks all the time.
Really.
Harbier, since I kind of coined the term in my own head, even though I was told I have anxiety and all this stuff, and I started kind of practicing certain, recalibrating exercises, I haven't had a panic attack to date.
Really?
And I really think a lot of my issues were processing space. I classified myself as introverted. I still, to this day, sometimes will not go to Costco because I call it the Costco effect. It's too strenuous to
Yeah.
process all that space and all those aisles and all those things at once. Makes me want to throw up. Like, I will not go to Costco. My husband has to go with me. He knows that. I'm like, you might as well give up my membership because I'm not going unless you take me. And he knows that. And I think a lot of the book is also about how this is affecting relationships.
Mm,
And there's a lot of stories of people I've encountered, but also relationships I've heard about, and friendships I've had that have suffered because of this. And I think there maybe people in the industry might feel this as well, but with friends, I feel a lot of them would come out and say to me, like, well, you haven't been around. You haven't been around for a while, or, we're not going to call you anymore because of this. Right. And I think that we're so quick to make assumptions and judge. And there's a lot of that in this book as well, and how to kind of overcome that, how we can be a more spatially sensitive generation, and how we can also build our spatial empathy. A big piece of the parietal lobe and the processing that goes on is empathy for others. So when we talk about spatial awareness, it's not just where we are in space, but it's where we are in space in relation to others as well. And that is why children are suffering now with making friendships, with going to
mm.
birthday parties. How many times I have to ask my kids, do you want to go to this birthday party? Oh, no, 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 no. Right. But in our time, we would jump at birthday parties. We would jump at going anywhere. We would jump at playing outside. We would go randomly talk to the neighbors. Children are not growing up this way. So yes, we're affected, but I can't imagine the next generation.
No kidding. No kidding. Absolutely. That is really, really interesting too, because these are all, I think all of us, especially us as optometrists in the exam room, we've seen these tendencies, these symptoms, I guess we can call them, of these changes in behavior. And we would blame it on screens, but it's like, oh, too much screen time. Kids are just indoors too much. It's not really connecting the dots as to like what, okay, yes, screens, but then what? It's kind of like saying, your blood sugar's high, but I don't know why, right? It's you want to kind of go in, and now we understand the mechanism of
Understand
why
why.
somebody's blood
And
sugar
we
is high.
talk a lot about the pathophysiology in the book. I
Right.
mean, it's not all pathophysiology because, people don't want to read all of that, but it's a lot of what does this mean when we're targeting the fovea, and, where is that process, the dorsal stream, the ventral stream. And by no means, I am not a neuro person. And I probably was sleeping in that lecture in school because I was like, I had to relearn all of this myself. And, I'm also not, I'm not strong with VT. I'm not strong in any of those spaces. This was all me kind of researching and taking those, that year to just understand all of this and then put it together kind of in a book format that's also easy for others to understand. Because I also want all of us as healthcare providers to know, but also patients to know, and then be able to go to their optometrist and say, hey, this is what's happening. I want to make this as part of, kind of like we classify dry eyes. Well, let's do spatial awareness training. Let's train our awareness in space because we are going to need it.
Yeah. So I was thinking that sounds a lot like the type of stuff our VT friends would kind of
Mhm.
talk about too, right? I
Yes,
think this is kind of
yes.
right up their alley as far as building that spatial awareness, helping children process their surroundings. That is, as I've become a bit more connected with that community. I'm certainly no VT person, but I've gotten more connected with that community, and some of my friends are friends in that space, and even done some training. I do want to give a quick shout out to Dr. V Tuban and Dr. Angela Peddle, who do this crash
Of course.
course in neuro optometry and that kind of stuff. And I did that. And a lot of what you're saying aligns with some of those things, and using prism or using small plus and
Yeah,
minus lenses, things like that, that might change how a person perceives their
absolutely.
their surroundings. Stuff like that can be super valuable, and those tools are relatively easy to implement in the practice. So I think combined with what you're sharing and teaching, and having some tools in the toolkit like that, we could
Yeah.
potentially help. I don't know how many people who are kind of suffering in silence almost, and you're going to shed light on it. And then we also now have the tools to support. I think that's really huge. Um, but I want to touch on the Costco thing real quick. I feel like Costco could either be like a wonderland or like a war zone, depending on who you are, right? Like people like my wife are like, I go to Costco and I feel like I'm at home,
Soak it
and
in.
just
Yeah.
like spends half a day there. And then there's people who go and are like, get me out of this place. I feel like there's bombs going off. And if you're the second person, there's things we need to address, right?
Yeah.
There's things that we need to help you with there, because it shouldn't feel that way. I know it's a lot to process, but it shouldn't feel that bad. So we should be helping our patients who tell us those things. Now, I want to, if you can share a bit more. Obviously, we want people to read your book, but can you give me a few I think you've highlighted some of the symptoms that we would be seeing, but what are some of the things that you might help a patient? You said you've done some of these things yourself, exercises and things that have helped
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Can you share with us what some of those things would be?
So, let's talk about kids because I feel like they're the next generation.
Yeah.
And, a lot of them will go right into screen time. And, that's training our fovea and our ventral stream. We want to train our dorsal stream, which is more about that's a spatial awareness
More
stream.
like peripheral?
Yes, yes. So before your child is going to go on a computer for, I don't know, an hour, why not play ball?
Mm,
Right? So pre-train the spatial side of your system or your dorsal stream before training your ventral stream.
I see.
So don't go from staring at a phone to going on your computer, but go from training that spatial system, whether it's playing ball, whether it's playing badminton, like whatever you need to train that spatial awareness or that side of your vision. My favorite games are car games. So in the car, a lot of us sit and I don't know, watch our iPad or,
Mm,
watch TV even. Some people have them in the car, or screens, but it's playing games like I Spy or Follow That Car. Follow That
mhm.
Car I love because it's like, I tell my kids, okay, follow that car. Tell me where you think they're going. It's building that
Ah,
imaginative side of the
yeah,
parietal
yeah,
lobe.
yeah.
well. Where do you think it's going? Do you think it's going to turn right? Who's right? Is it going to turn left? And then they get excited and it's like, who do you think is in that car? It's building all of those parietal lobe skills that are for imagination, for processing space. So, those are a couple of like easy exercises for people to do at home. And I think that's what the book talks about. It's not about, vision therapy. These are easy exercises for
Mm,
people to recalibrate and do more often with their children so that they're able to process that space, and how to also get grounded, like starting small steps. There's a lot of children that fear driving. There was a
mm,
study done in, I think it was 2018. 25% of American teens that do not drive cite fear as the primary reason.
okay.
So when we start looking at that, they're afraid. We were not afraid when we started driving. I
Mm,
failed 3 times and I still was not afraid, right? I mean, we jumped at our license, right?
yeah.
When we start looking at why are they fearing driving, it's because they fear processing traffic lights, you know, lines on the road, other cars, there's too much congestion. It's like the Costco effect. They can't get on the road. They're scared of being around others or other things, too many objects. So when you actually look into the parietal lobe and the dorsal stream, when it is understimulated, the amygdala, which is the fear center, actually goes on high alert.
Interesting.
And it
Okay.
starts to say, what's going on? What should I do? And that
Hmm.
actually translates into being more anxious, being emotionally dysregulated, and feeling more overwhelmed. A
So
lot of the
if the
symptoms that we're
dorsal stream is not activated as much, the amygdala is hyperactive or
you
whatever.
got
How
it.
you
It goes on high alert, like what's happening.
interesting.
And and they talk to each other, the parietal lobe and the amygdala, and they have to kind of calibrate each other. And if they're not, it doesn't know what to do. So it goes on high
Mm,
alert, kind of like the Costco effect. And I think that's why a lot of kids, when they come in, I'm like, why are they not talking to me? Like usually kids used to come in the office and say hi and sit down and whatever. And now they don't. They don't want to. It's a new space. It's processing too much for them. So they want to look down, not even at their phone. They just want to look down, right?
right.
And I think that's a big demographic that hopefully with the book we're going to tap into.
That's amazing. That's a lot of information that certainly I wasn't aware of, and I'm sure many of us who are listening were not as keenly aware of. So I think that's going to be really, really helpful for us as practitioners, but as parents, aunts and uncles, even if you don't have your own kids, but if you're aware of how your nieces and nephews are behaving, super helpful. So I think that's going to be really great. So when does the book come out?
End of October
End of
2026
October. So we
this
still
year.
got a few months till that comes out. But in the meantime, between now and then, are you doing any presentations on this? Are you speaking on this topic? Any other way people can learn a bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, right now I haven't given my timeline of speaking engagements yet, but hopefully you will see some things come out in the next 6 months. But definitely you can follow me on Instagram because that's where I'm gonna
Right.
say everything. But also I do have a newsletter that is free to subscribe to through my
Oh, perfect.
Instagram. You can click the link there for my free newsletter. And I do talk a lot about spatial awareness in the free newsletter there. So, I mean, if people want a little bit more information, they can definitely go to that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. We'll share contact information towards the end of the podcast. So stay tuned for that. Let's switch gears. I mean, not so much actually, because I want to talk about all the things that you're balancing, right? So you're writing a book, you do lecturing and speaking. Obviously, you have your clinics, you're a parent, and you have the podcast, which you started now a couple of years ago, 2 years ago,
Yeah,
is it?
2 years
And
ago.
you've
Yeah.
been like super consistent with it as I've been following along, really doing an amazing job of bringing on great guests and consistency really is the key thing in any of these types of endeavors, and the fact that you have been as consistent as you have is really incredible to me, knowing that I put my own podcast out there, knowing how much work it is to put out weekly episodes. So I'm really, really impressed by that. But I would love for you to share, and I know you're a very authentic and honest person, so I'm asking you this kind of like to share as much as you're comfortable about that journey of like finding the time, and how challenging was it? Did you already talked a little bit about how you questioned yourself, like, who am I to do this thing? Talk us through some of those thoughts in the beginning of the podcast journey, at least, and then how you became more comfortable with that.
I'm going to start with, because I think a lot of people will resonate with this, is there were so many times I was turned down. There were so many times. I mean, you're not accepted, whether it's speaking engagements or whatever, even getting my podcast up and getting ads in them. You're not paid right away. Nothing happens. Rome was not built in a day. And it takes countless rejections sometimes for somebody to be motivated. And for me, that's what it took. I was told many times that I didn't look the part, I didn't talk the part, from companies in our industry. And I was at a kind of breaking point, because I was the time before I started my podcast, right before I was going through a mental health journey. And I was trying to put out mental health episodes. I don't know if Herbie, you remember this time, but I was trying to, reach out to companies and say, listen, we're talking about dry eyes, we're talking about myopia control, but hey, I ain't selling your lenses. I ain't talking about your contacts if I'm not mentally healthy. If I don't want to go to work and I don't feel good, the last thing I'm going to talk about is your stuff. So, my thought process was, we all need to be mentally healthy. So, hey, industry partners, do you want to support this? And Herbie, that's coming from somebody who already had 3 practices, was, established in the industry, in the sense of, like, I had good industry relations, and not one person accepted it. I reached out to, you name one company, I reached out to them. And so that was a really depressing moment for me, that, almost a sense of, I don't want to be part of this field. It was, what field am I in? A field that doesn't want to talk about what actually helps us. And how many of us, like, and for me, it was, the target was a lot of moms, because that's what I was going through. And it was like, as moms, like, there's so many of us that are really stressed out, and don't they want to support us? And then I was really grateful to OSI. OSI was the first group that did not hesitate. They didn't bat an eyelash. And it was, we're going to put this episode out there for you. And, I think they were the first people, we were the first people to even have a mental health episode. And then after that, I started seeing more roll out. And even now I'm seeing a lot more roll out. And I'm like, and these were industry partners that I had asked a long time ago, but now they see that it is affecting people. People come out to these lectures. People want to know, they want to learn about their mental health. They want to feel good. And so for me, it was a lot of rejection. And then finally, the 1 or 2 people that had faith in me. And I think that's what I held on to. And when OSI said yes to me, I said, okay, this matters. I matter. This topic matters. And that's when I said, I'm going to start my podcast, and I'm going to talk about anxiety. And I think our first episode was about anxiety, because that's when I was really suffering from it. And then it grew, like, the podcast grew to talking about all sorts of other things. But in that time, I was still rejected from many, many, you want to talk about conferences, whatnot. And, come full circle, many years later, the tables have turned, right? Where, I don't have the time to do every conference or talk everywhere. But it's a learning lesson for all of us, I think, that, don't underestimate the power of certain topics, certain people. Don't judge a book by its cover. And, I share a lot of my story in my book as well. And I hope people will keep pushing, right? Don't let one person, one company tell you you can't do it. You can do it. You'll find another way, and you'll figure it out.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who could resonate with that. I certainly do as well. And I think the beginning of that journey, especially if you're trying to do something impactful, it can be challenging, because not a lot of people are going to see what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And for you to know inside that you were on the right track, and maybe the rest of the world just hadn't caught up to where you were at yet. The fact that you kept going is amazing. And a huge shout out to OSI. Really, that's really incredible. And I, being part of the OSI group myself, it makes me feel good that, we are part of a group that actually cares about more than just eyes and just retail. It actually cares about the well-being of optometrists and people in our profession. So that's wonderful.
100%. Like, it was, I mean, again, like, this is not about an OSI episode, but, like,
No, but
I
I'd
mean,
like to,
I'm so thankful to them to this day, to
Yeah.
want to even it was really about the well-being of us. For them it wasn't about like, well, who's going to sponsor it and what are we going to do and the financial aspect of it. For them it was, we actually truly care about you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I like to shout people out. Of course, this conversation is about you and everything that all the amazing things you bring to the table. But you know, we love this idea of like a self-made man, so to speak. But I don't think there's such a thing as a person who's entirely self-made. Like even the person who starts from zero and scraps it out on their own, at some point somebody helped them with something, and
Yeah.
it's just up
Yes.
to you how much of it you want to acknowledge or how much you would like to say, I did this entire thing by myself. um, at the end of the day, always I did something to support you, and I think it's worth us. In fact, I think we should take the time to appreciate and acknowledge everybody who does. And recently I put something on Instagram. I don't know if you saw it, but it was a clip from a previous podcast where I wanted to shout out industry partners who do support us, and I made a specific effort to not name anybody, because I know in my career, and now you've very clearly stated in your career, there are people who haven't helped us,
Hmm.
but there are people who have. And the
Hmm.
people who have, when I say you know who you are, they know who they are. In fact, I spoke with a rep yesterday and she kind of got a little emotional with me over the phone. She's like, I felt that. I heard you talking to me. And I was like, that's what I was trying to do. And the people who are like, was that me? Probably
Yeah.
not. Right. And I think
Yeah.
it's important then that we do that. We recognize it because those people are going to continue to support us. We need to make that mutual and reciprocal.
Mhm.
So, anyways, I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't want to go too much of a tangent there, but if you feel like you want to shout somebody else out who supported you, you're more than welcome to. This podcast is not sponsored by anybody, so we could say all the names we want. All right. But
Don't want to make
listen,
anyone angry, so we'll
yeah,
stop
we
over
don't want to
there.
make anybody angry, right? Start naming other names. But anyway, I like to ruffles feathers from time to time a little bit. I think it shakes things up a bit, wakes people up a little bit and takes us out of our mundane sort of rut routines that we're in. So you shared that early journey of the podcast. Where do you feel like you're at now? And where do you feel like you're going with the podcast? What do you see next 2 to 5 years?
Um, I think I'm on track of where I wanted to be, of continuously educating about all of healthcare, but putting optometry at the forefront of that. Um, I just want to bring bigger and better episodes, to educate everyone. And I do want other, not just optometrists, but other healthcare professions like chiros, physiotherapists, and others that may not be as well respected in the healthcare field, to listen. And I encourage them to learn from these podcasts. Like that would be my reward, is 5 years from now, every physiotherapist, every chiro, every optometrist listens and
Mm.
is learning and is being able to implement those things in their own practice, right? So, for example, if we have a sleep doctor on who has great knowledge, encouraging people to incorporate that into, for us, like circadian rhythm, talking about that, talking about it to our patients who come in tired all the time. I think those are important conversations. So I just want it to really resonate to people, and I hope, obviously we all want listenership, and I think, for me that's a big thing. You listen, I feel good.
I love that. That's really cool that you're doing that. Actually, you're providing a resource to, like, a lot of times it has healthcare practitioners, professionals. We don't have somebody to help us. We're helping our patients, and then we don't always have someone to help us. And so the fact that you're providing that is really amazing. And obviously, want to encourage our friends and our colleagues in optometry and eye care to listen to your podcast. But I'd love to hear in a couple of years how that's gone, and that you've had other people tuning in. And the nice thing about your podcast is my podcast is very much directed at our industry and people within it. Yours is broader, and you're bringing on professionals from different areas that could be connect with just a random person in the public. It could connect with somebody in, like you said, chiro or physio or dental. It's nice that you have the guest on that could really reach a very wide audience. So
No, thank
hopefully
you.
that keeps
I
growing.
mean, both are needed, right, Harbier?
No,
Like,
of
we
course.
have to get better in our industry as well,
Yeah, yeah.
but then also expand our
Of course. No,
horizons.
no, I
Yeah.
love that. And I love that we're taking
We
our
should
our
team up.
our audiences are, there's an overlap, of course, because we want ODs to listen to what you're
Yeah.
providing as well, but that we're kind of focusing on different things. I love that. So we have that synergy and that collaboration, which we should all have anyways. Even if our podcast, we're both facing at the same people. I'm not the competition type of person. I always feel like there's an opportunity for synergy, no matter who you are, what you're up to. I want to take a turn, since we are talking about other healthcare practitioners and professionals, to talk about something that's happened in the recent past with you, where I'm trying to be as vague as I can, but I know who people who are listening and people who know you and follow you online will know what I'm talking about. But where other people online are just don't have that energy and that synergy and that feeling of collaboration, and they put out not the best vibes. And I know you went through something pretty tough recently, and I know there's a lot of our friends out there who are interested to hear from you, because you were incredible and you stayed very quiet during this period of time, and that was probably the best thing you could have done, but the hardest thing I imagine that you could have done also. If you're comfortable sharing as specific or as general you want to be, about people's behavior online and how it impacts other people and what you went through and how you were feeling at the time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Harbier. And, thank you. I know you called me in that time. So, thank you for that. I, appreciate your support and, backing me. It was a very stressful time, of course. First, I'm going to say, haters are going to be haters. And, and obviously they're going to hate anyone and everyone for whatever reason. The one good thing that came out of it was, a couple good things that came out of it. It was very stressful initially, but I realized that the old me 20 years ago that thought I was just an optometrist, clearly I'm not just an optometrist, right? And clearly I held some value for somebody who was, considered themselves hierarchy wise in healthcare above me. I was important enough for them to talk, and there was a lot that went on behind the scenes, and a lot of people were not able to see that. But I was, I want to call it trolled pretty badly behind the scenes as well. And it was hard to stay quiet. I mean, there was times I cried, like, the first and second day, it was just a lot of crying. But what kind of shocked me, Harbier, was the amount of support I got from the industry. Because a few years ago, when I felt I didn't get a lot of the industry support, I kind of wrote off the industry in my head that these are not my people, right? But when I got the support that I did from people I had no idea who they were, I was shocked. Like, these are people from the US. Like, I'm Canadian, so US, I have no idea, never heard their names before, flooding in, messaging me, messaging, the other people, supporting me, writing me like for the next 3 days, a few times a day. One girl wrote me and said, "I'm in my daughter's gymnastics class and I'm on fire right now," commenting. I guess
I could probably guess who that is.
I should probably be, watching her. And it was immense, the amount of support. And I think I came out of it saying, I can't be prouder to be in this industry, because I don't think there's another industry out there that would support some random person like me who didn't know any of you out there like that. And like I said, I'm not someone who's going to every conference, knows everybody. And for them to be able to pour into me, a nobody, was huge. And I get that some of it was protecting the profession, but they didn't have to do that. And they didn't have to put their name on the line. I mean, because these trollers could have targeted them. And, I personally wrote all of them because I was just so thankful. And, after that, I came out and I said to my husband, maybe I have the wrong friends. Like, I should be friends with all these people, right? But it's just interesting to see that level of support. But, back to the point of haters going to be haters. you will always have people put you down. I think that was just a next level because I've never been, bullied, trolled, whatever you want to call it online.
Yeah.
You will always have people on a small scale, on a big scale that are going to put you down because that's what makes them feel good. And I think we just have to stay calm, wrap our heads around it, and know that it's not a reflection of us. And I really tried to focus on being grateful for the people who were. Like, don't focus on the aspect that it happened or the people that weren't there for me, but focus on being grateful for the people that were there for me and the amount of support that I received, maybe versus the other person. So
Yeah.
I think that was huge for me, and it was more of a grounding exercise to stay focused and not react right away and not make those assumptions. So it was something I'll never forget.
Mhm.
But you know what? That just pushes me harder to show what optometrists are made of.
Yeah. No kidding. I now again, I commend you for your fortitude during that time, like being able to stay as composed as you did, at least publicly. I understand behind the scenes there's a lot of emotions and all that thing, but publicly keep yourself out of it. And then I know you did post a video eventually to kind of share some of your thoughts, but even that, as composed as you were, that was huge. And I think there's a lot of lessons for all of us to learn there, as far as how far we tend to go online, and where the lines become blurred between like our online self and our real self. And certainly that the video that the other person posted was clearly showing that they had lost that sense of where that line was. But your fortitude, and then, like you said, the support, wow, incredible and immense. Like I felt like, wow, this is so cool. ODs really come to each other's side and to support one another is really amazing. So a lot of positives out of it. I know, unfortunately, you had to go through pretty big negatives there for that to come to fruition. But so
I have to
thanks
give
for
a
sharing
shout
that.
out actually, Herbier. Julian Prozia, who you know as
Oh
well,
yeah,
he
Julian
he put out
posted
a
a video.
video, and I didn't know he was going to put this out, and I, was obviously very thankful. But I texted him after because my mom called me the moment she saw the video,
Oh yeah,
and she said to me, "Who is this guy? I love him."
he's awesome.
And I,
He's
I
great.
texted him in after, and I said, you know what, the fact that we can all support each other, and the fact that I knew him and he knew me, but we didn't know each other that well, but what a
Mhm.
relationship that is built now
That's awesome.
between the two of us. And I think that's so important, and we should want each other to succeed, because in the end, like, we're representing our field. And
Mhm.
my goal, whether it's social media, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a book, is to take this field upwards,
Mhm.
and is to gain the day that healthcare says we are doctors, is the day I will feel I've done what I needed to.
That's
Served
a
my
big mission.
purpose.
That's a big mission. Well, for what it's worth, I was just kind of searching the other person's profile. It doesn't seem to be showing up. So,
Ah,
not
okay.
sure what
Yeah.
not sure what that means exactly, but hopefully that there were some consequences.
Industry, whether it's mental health, whether it's the problems, everything seems so peachy. And yes, on social media, it looks like I'm great and I'm like doing all these things and I'm like the best person in the world. But, in real life, if you talk to me, you will hear, like you said, our struggles, and nothing comes easily, and we can be our authentic selves. So I encourage us to talk to each other. That is the whole point of us being able to uplift ourselves and our profession. So, talk to each other, talk to me, who talk to you, whoever you need to talk to, but
Yeah,
talk.
talk. I love that. That's so simple, but I bet for a lot of people not so easy. But it has so much value. I think in our personal relationships, in our professional relationships, just talk, just say things out loud. And sometimes that means there's going to be a little bit of a riff or something, but the better you say it out loud than you keep it inside.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's my approach at home as well as out in the world as well. That reminded me of something at the last OSI summit in Niagara there last year. I was speaking with a really great OD who certainly is leaps and bounds ahead of me as far as his clinical and his business and how well he's done there. um, as we're talking, I realized he's quite comfortable with sharing emotions. I thought that was really awesome, and he shared with me how useful that is, valuable that is in clinic. Like, I guess the right way is he's very empathetic. And I was talking to him about a couple of my staff members, one in particular who I was so impressed with and was really helping recently our business move forward. And he said, well, have you told her how grateful you are? I was like, well, I make sure I show her appreciation, and I make sure. He's like, no, have you gone to her and said the words that you just said to me? Have you said them directly to her? And I was like, you know what? No, I haven't. He said, well, you absolutely better do that. You have to do that. And I think that's so important to acknowledge the people in your life who are helping you, supporting you, feel like they've done something for you, even if it's really little. Say the words out loud. And it is a little bit harder than it sounds, but it's immensely
Yeah.
valuable. And so I think, anyways, that reminded me. I was
And
reminded of that.
gratefulness is a
Based
big
on
part
what
of
you said.
everyone's journey, right? I mean, I tell my kids to this day, be grateful. Be grateful for your friends, be grateful for your teachers, don't always think so negatively. Gratefulness is so important. And when I think back, like, I'm so grateful for the people that I have met and have not only just been there for me, just been able to talk to me, right? And
Mhm,
take that 2 minutes out of your day to call each other. I mean, we no longer call each other, we just text, right? So
mhm.
it's like just calling each other, being there for each other, taking that moment to see each other. Be grateful. I think that's huge. And like you said, with your staff, that's a big thing. And I'm probably like overly grateful and overly talkative about it, but that's just how I deal with, my health and my mental health is like, I'll
Yeah.
go into work and I'll be like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Or like, like I'll say all those things because for me, that's so important. That's something I wanted to hear. And I feel I'm very observant about that. And that's something I'm very attuned to, that I need to say it to others as well. So,
Yeah.
feeling being grounded, being grateful, all part of the journey.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Meenal. I appreciate you sharing
Thank
all of
you.
that.
Thanks for inviting me, Herbier.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'll have you back. Maybe after the book launches, we'll have you back and we'll talk a little bit more about
Sure.
spatial awareness processing disorder.
You got it.
All right. Thank you. And thank you to everybody, again, who's listening and watching the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I'll see you guys in the next episode.